Hello, good morning, everyone. We're gonna get started. Lecture 8 is relatively short compared to the other ones, so we should be able to finish it, in one class, and that would leave us Wednesday for the test review. So let's get to it. Um, start with some overview here for the digestive system. Here's some fun facts you can read on your own. The function of the digestive system is pretty self-explanatory, I would think, right? You would need it to ingest food, and then once the food gets into your system, you will need to break down the food into smaller molecules so that you can absorb them into your bloodstream. And whatever you cannot digest, it is going to be eliminated as waste. So this breakdown is both going to be involving physical plus chemical breakdown. The physical aspect is about chopping it into smaller pieces. So like when you're chewing on your food, right? The mixing and the churning of the stomach, those are examples of physical digestion. And chemical breakdown is when you're actually converting the macromolecules into its individual building components, right? So it's the same kind of definition as chemistry when you talk about physical and chemical change. In physical breakdown, you're not really changing the identity of the food, but chemical breakdown, you are changing it from, say, polysaccharides into individual glucose. Right? So that happens at various stage in the digestive system. Now, the food goes from the mouth all the way to the other end, and the path that it takes in the process is called the alimentary canal, but most people just call it the GI tract, which stands for gastrointestinal tract. Again, it starts in the mouth and then it exits in the anus. And along the way, there are various what we call accessory organs that will help with the digestion process. These accessory organs will be secreting various enzymes and mixture into the GI tract. The food themselves are not going to be entering these accessory organs, but we need these organs to be part of the complete digestive process. Now, this GI tract, again, connects from the mouth to the anus, is very long, and um, it composed of various layers along the way. So, starting with the innermost layer, this would be the layer that is in direct contact with the food, direct contact with food. That's called the mucosa. Mucosa. It's made up of a layer of epithelium supported by connective tissue that lines the lumen. So we learned about various types of epithelium before. We have columnar cells, we have squamous cells, and so on and so forth. It depends on which part of the digestive system we are looking at. The type of epithelium is going to be different. Okay, there are some parts that requires absorptions, and you would need a particular type of epithelium. There are places where you need to resist acidic environment, then you would need a different type of epithelium. Okay, so in lecture 10 of last semester, we talked about a bunch of different ones, right? They could be simple, they could be stratified. So I'll be bringing those up along the way when we go through the different parts of the digestive system. Now, lumen just means the inside of a hollow structure or organ. Okay, so if you think about the intestinal tract as like the tissue paper roll here, this part, that's called the lumen. That's where the food is going to be passing through. Okay, this hole here. It could be the lumen of a blood vessel. So lumen is not a special term That's restricted to digestive system. It's just the hollow part of a structure. Okay. So the mucosa, the innermost layer, is responsible for digestive, absorptive, and secretory processes. Okay. So digestive, it's obvious that's what it means, like breaking it down physically, chemically. Absorbing it would be taking the nutrients that you get from digestion and putting it into blood, whereas secretory processes would be actually secreting certain mixture. So, like in the stomach, the mucosa is responsible for secreting stomach acid. Okay, so different locations have different secretory um, processes. Not all of them, okay, but some of the parts. And I'll show you which one they are. So that's the innermost layer of the GI tract. One layer outside of that is going to be your submucosa. Okay, the submucosa contains blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and you remember lymphatic vessels are part of your immune system, right? They are going to help with drainage as well. So this is for immune surveillance. And there are also nerves that would allow you to feel food that are passing through your intestinal tract. Okay, the stretching, for example, right? When there's food passing through it. Um, and in addition, there are specialized lymph nodules, which are called Peyer's patches. They are only found throughout the submucosa of the small intestine. Right? And the purpose of these Peyer's patches is, first of all, they are uh, filled with lymphatic cells, and they would maintain the right normal flora population. And we learned normal flora back in lecture three, right? These are normal organism that lives in our body, and they take up so much space that there are no room for the bad ones to kind of colonize, right? But we don't want our system to be overwhelmed with these normal floras either, because too much of a good thing could have negative impacts, right? And so the pyro patches kind of keep them in check and make sure they're not overgrowing. Right? So innermost layer is mucosa. Outside of that, we have submucosa. And outside of the submucosa, the next layer is called muscularis. Okay, as the name implies, muscularis is the layer that has muscles in it. Okay, so we need to move the food along the GI tract um, to propel it, and all these is actually done with smooth muscles. Right? I don't know if you remember smooth muscle, um, but all the muscles that you can voluntarily control, the ones from the primary motor cortex, right? All these muscles that you have voluntary control over, they are called skeletal muscle. Right? We learned that last semester again. So smooth muscles are these muscles that have that are involuntary, and they are controlled by the ANS, the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so you remember the ANS has two divisions, right? Actually, anybody remembers what are the two divisions of the ANS? They work against each other. One starts with a P, one starts with a S. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Hmm. That's right. So there's a sympathetic system, which is for fight or flight. And then there's the parasympathetic, right? Which is for rest and digestion. So when you're resting, when you're digesting, that would be the smooth muscle portion. Okay. Um, the parasympathetic system will promote these smooth muscles to help you propel the food along your GI tract. So I'm just going to put it right here, parasympathetic. All right. So, um, for the most part, the inner layer of the muscularis is consists of circular muscle. So the circular muscle is gonna basically open and close like this, so it's kind of like squeezing motion. And then the outer layer um, of it is called the longitudinal layer. The longitudinal layer. So look, it's really hard for me to show you on virtually, but look at the screen, okay? So circular is like this, okay? Open and close. Now, if I rotate it and you look at the longitudinal, it's outside of it, then the longitudinal is responsible for stretching and closing, stretching and closing. So basically, the two layers work together like this, okay? The circular would squeeze, and then the longitudinal would push, okay? And together, squeeze and push and squeeze and push. It basically allows the food to move along the GI tract. I guess one way to visualize this is think of like if you have like a really long sock or like a stocking or something, and you have a tennis ball inside, how are you gonna move the tennis ball along the sock? Right? You have to squeeze and push and squeeze and push, right? So the squeezing is done by the circular layer, and the pushing is done by the longitudinal layer. Okay, so that motion creates a wave-like contraction that will moves the food throughout your entire GI tract. Yeah, there's a name for this kind of wave-like contraction. I'm going to tell you later when we get the slide. So two layers of muscularis, two layers of muscles in the GI tract. But for the stomach has an extra layer. Okay? This extra layer is the deepest layer. It's inside the circular layer, and it's called oblique. Okay, so oblique means diagonal, diagonal. Right? So these diagonal muscle would create like a twisting motion, right? As you probably know, the stomach is responsible for doing most of the digestion of the food. So there's like a lot of mixing and turning that's necessary to mix the food with the acid, and that's created by the oblique muscle. All right. Innermost layer, mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and then the outermost layer. Outermost layer would be called the serosa. If you open up the abdominal cavity and you are able to see the guts, that's what you'll be looking at. Okay, it's the surface basically of your uh, internal organs. In this case, the GI tract. Okay, very thin layer of squamous epithelium. Squamous is flat, right? Okay, flat cells. These are like those sunny side up eggs, if you remember, right? Flat cells, supported by connective tissue. Um, so like there are adipose tissue, like fat tissue, to connect them together. There might be some um, loose connective tissue that pack things in place, right? And the serosa secretes a serous fluid. And this is like a slimy kind of lubricant that covers the outer surface of a GI tract. Because as the food is moving through your small intestine, for example, the surfaces of these small intestines might be rubbing against each other. And of course, you don't want them to create friction, right? You want them to be lubricated so it minimizes wear and tear. Okay? It's a bad thing if you have a hole in the GI tract. The thing's just gonna leak all over the abdominal cavity. So by basically lubricating them, you prevent such tearing from happening. So this is what it actually looks like. This, of course, is a cartoon drawing, but this is an actual uh, picture of the GI tract of the intestine, I believe, and it's a transverse cut of it. And you can see the inside of the intestine is actually not smooth like the tissue roll that I showed you. Yeah, if it's smooth, it's actually um, not having enough surface area. When it comes to absorbing nutrients and things like that, we really need to have a high surface area, right? So by folding it up like this, we maximize the amount of surface area we can pack into the intestine. So over here, the deeper purple layer, like obviously it's not purple and blue, right? Like they stain it when they create these lights. So the innermost layer is called the mucosa. Like I said, that's actually very thin, and it's where the food will be in direct contact with. And beyond that, you have the submucosa right here. This layer. Actually, I gotta change my color. Maybe do red over here. Okay, this layer with kind of like turquoise bluish color right here. That's where you will find the blood vessels, the lymphatic vessels, and the nerves. And then outside of that, you can see the muscularis, okay, which is this layer right here. That's this circular layer, and then that's where you will find the longitudinal layer. It's two layers of muscularis, right? And then they call it the adventitia, but serosa is fine. Okay. The same thing over here. Okay, so that's where the food passes through. All right. Okay. Blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves are found in the. Let me do a poll with you guys. Go ahead. Okay, the correct answer is submucosa. Submucosa. All right. So let's take a look at the next part, right? From mouth to stomach. But before that, since I have most of you here, um, I know I told you about the changes with the test requirement, like with the camera on and everything. But I have been receiving a lot of emails from students asking for some clarification. And we actually finalized it in the department last week, Friday, actually. I think Friday we finalized it. And so I created an announcement for you to look at. So when you log in, you will see an announcement, and then you can view it. Um, but if you somehow lost that, you can go to course information, and then there is assessment policy right here. Okay, assessment policy. And then you can read the whole requirement. Okay. Uh, Again, it's very self-explanatory stuff. Basically, just use common sense. Okay. If you feel like it's something you shouldn't be doing, if you're writing this in an in-person environment and it's something that you wouldn't do in an in-person environment, then you shouldn't be doing it in an online environment. That's basically that's the guideline that you should be using. Okay. I don't think you guys need to do too much rough work at all. So I don't think this applies to you, but I'm just putting it there, okay? If for some reason you need to do some rough work and you have some scrap paper, we have to be able to see your hands when you're doing it. So like, right now I'm writing something and you can't see it. So if you're writing something, if you're doing maybe a diagram, a sketch to help you answer the questions, you have to tilt your camera so that we can see what you're doing. Okay. And then when you're done, you can just, put your face back up like that. And at the end, you will be asked to like take a picture of your rough work. So you just put it in the camera and then you take a picture and you submit it. Okay. But I again, like I don't think this is gonna be a concern for you guys. Certainly not now. Okay, like maybe earlier in the units when you were doing the blood typing and stuff like that, sure, rough work makes sense. But at this point, um, I don't think so, right?
Sorry,
Submission, yeah,
may I ask a question, please?
please go ahead. Yeah.
Sometimes when we take a picture with the laptop, it's not like very clear, so I don't know how
Yeah, so
the
that's
professor will
fine.
see it.
Because again, like I'm not grading your rough work, right? So like I don't need it to be like super clear, right? So you just take the picture with the uh, webcam and this should be sufficient. All right.
All right.
There is another question. For this test, we need rough work like diagrams. What do you mean? Can you elaborate a little bit? What do you mean by that? Like you mean you need to draw diagrams on the paper to help you answer the question? Is that?
Yeah. It's just for ourselves, before deciding the answer.
Oh
And
yeah,
then,
sure. Okay, so yeah,
yeah.
if this is something that you guys need to do, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, all you have to do is like when you are doing it on the paper, just tilt your camera so we can see it. You might get a warning from the program saying that we cannot see your face. That's okay, just ignore it. Just keep on doing it. And then when you're done, you just tilt it back up. Okay. And then at the end, you will have an option of like submitting your rough work. So I just need to see your rough work and then, you just take a picture of it. Uh, Again, it doesn't have to be like crystal clear, but I just have to be able to see it. Uh, that is all. Okay. So there will not like I know in math you guys have to submit like good quality pictures afterwards, right? Is that correct? Like after you finish the test, you still have to submit extra good
Yeah.
pictures, right? Is
Yeah.
that correct? Yeah? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right. So that's not required for me because I'm not grading your rough work. Okay. We just need to have a record of the rough work, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Again, I know we're changing the rules halfway through, but everybody's doing it. So another thing is if some of you has where is it? There is something that's like again, you need to read through this carefully. Okay. Like this is the same stuff for chemistry and another subject as well. So another thing is the prohibited item, right? If you have a secondary screen, you need to disconnect the secondary screen. Okay. So what that means is, for example, right now I have dual screen. I have the laptop main screen and then I have another screen on the side. And some people have that and that's fine. But during the test, you need to disconnect the second screen. Okay. Otherwise, your test might get disqualified. Okay. Um, okay. Yeah. I mean, any other questions for me? Okay. If you think of anything, feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to clarify for it. Again, nothing to worry about. This is not like we're not hunting people down or anything like that. It's just for integrity, right? Okay, we just try to maintain a level playing field. So we know some people are taking advantage of this system, and we just want to make sure that we have things in place that would kind of counter that. Okay. All right. Back to our, excuse me one second. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and label this diagram first before we go through the PowerPoint slides. Okay. Over here, this is in your study guide, and and then we're gonna just label all the parts first. So starting with right here, um, that is the mouth, um, but we can use a fancy word. It's called oral cavity. And obviously, that's where you put the food in the mouth. And in the oral cavity, you will have both physical and chemical digestion starting. Yeah, so let's write down here. Begins. Now, in the mouth, there is the tongue, which actually is really big. It's much bigger than most people uh, imagine it to be. So that's right here, the tongue. And the tongue has taste buds, of course, but the tongue also helps move the food around in the mouth, puts it in the right place so you can chew it properly. You would know how important the tongue is if you ever bit on it before. Okay, you bit on it and then it bleeds and then it hurts. And the next time you eat, it's kind of not able to move the food around as good and you kind of only have to chew on one side and it's kind of inconvenient, right? So tongue is quite important. It also rolls the food into a ball and push it to the back so you can swallow it. Yep, we all had that before. Yep. So over here, there's a little dangling thing. We actually mentioned this before in the respiratory system. This is called the uvula. The uvula is the extension of the soft palate. And what it does is it actually will prevent food from entering the nasal cavity, right? Seals nasal cavity during swallowing. Now, there are a lot of saliva being produced continuously. Um, Whether you're eating or not, you will make more while you're eating. But you continuously make them, keeps your mouth moist. And so there are three pairs of salivary gland. The biggest one are next to your ear. When you imagine something sour, like think of lemon, think of lime, that kind of stuff. Sometimes you start salivating and you can feel the saliva coming from behind your ear or like in front of your ear rather, right here. That is the biggest salivary gland. It's called the parotid. This is too thick. Let me take a notch down. Parotid, salivary gland. You also have one underneath your tongue. If you get your teeth clean, at the dentist, they have that tube that helps sucks your saliva, right? They usually would aim at the opening of these ones because that's the ones that are, constantly producing the saliva, and keeping your mouth moist. That is under the tongue, so it's called the sublingual salivary gland. And this bone here, um, like this one right here, this bone is called the mandible. The mandible. And if I tilt it a little bit around right here, that's another pair of salivary gland, and that is called the submandibular. Submandibular salivary gland. Okay, so three pairs of salivary glands, they are considered as accessory organs. They secrete things into the GI tract, in this case, saliva. Food do not enter the salivary glands. Okay, what else do we have? Over here, we have the throat. A fancy word for throat is pharynx. Not the first time we learn about it. Pharynx is the common passageway for food, water, and air. And it takes the food to the next tube right here. That is the anybody know what that is? That's behind the trachea. What is this thing called? Some of you will know it, right? Yeah, that is the esophagus. Esophagus. Okay, connects the food down. Sorry, connects the pharynx to the stomach and takes the food down. And there's the diaphragm right here. And what happens is actually there is like a little opening here in the diaphragm that allows the esophagus to pass through because the diaphragm separates the thoracic cavity with your abdominal cavity, right? But the esophagus has to be able to go through. So there is a little gap there is called the esophageal esophageal hiatus. Okay. There's a little break in the esophagus. That's what it means. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just noticed, Elphys, when you type the word esophagus, you put an O at the front. Yeah, that's very good. That's actually like an older spelling. In older textbook, you will see it spells with O-E. It's like a silent O or something. Okay, but nowadays, most textbook would spell it esophagus like that. All right, so esophageal hiatus, it's a gap in the diaphragm. All right, in the abdominal cavity now, we have a bunch of stuff here. Let's color some of these things. This big thing right here, that would be that would be the liver. Okay, so liver is another accessory organ. I'm just gonna use purple for all the accessory organ. Liver. Now, liver is not restricted to the digestive system. Liver does a lot of other things. It makes plasma protein for us. Long time ago in the course, we talked about things like albumin, fibrinogen, prothrombin. All these things are plasma proteins made in the liver, like complement proteins. Liver is also responsible for detoxifying the blood. Okay, but in the context of the digestive system, the liver makes something called bile. Okay, we'll learn more about bile later, but it helps with the digestions of lipid. Okay, so I'm going to put the function right here. Makes bile, produces bile. Now you can't really see it. I mean, you can see a little bit of it. There's a little pouch that hangs right here, and that is um, you can see better if you lift up the liver. Does anybody know what that might be? Yep, that is the gallbladder. Okay, so gallbladder is another accessory organ. And the gallbladder is responsible for storing bile. Okay, so stores bile. The liver makes it, the gallbladder stores it. People can have gallstone. I mentioned that to you before. Too much cholesterol, high cholesterol can cause some of it to crystallize in the gallbladder, and they will have to remove the gallbladder. And we can live without the gallbladder. Okay, on the side, this one is not part of the digestive system, but it's I guess they're just putting it there for reference, just like they put the trachea in, right? Even though it's not part of the digestive system. This is the spleen. We learn about the spleen in Unit 1 when we had the immune system. Actually, I think it was lecture 2 at the end. The spleen helps you store blood. It has some resident immune cells there. All right. Stomach is right here. This one, stomach. There's the stomach. I guess I'm not gonna color it in. Stomach. Now the beginning of the stomach, like around right here, there's something called the cardiac sphincter. Okay, a sphincter is kind of like a valve. So it keeps the stomach content inside the stomach. Okay. Food can go in and normally they don't come back out. The only time they come back out is, if you are vomiting. Or some people have like a weak cardiac sphincter and then the acid keeps on coming up and creates heartburn. Okay. There is another sphincter at the bottom here. That one is called the pyloric sphincter. Okay. You don't want to pass the acid and stuff forward until the food is reasonably digested. Okay, so we will learn in a bit that the stomach is protected by mucus. That's why the acid is not going to bother the lining. It's not going to irritate it. But the next part, the small intestine, it does not have those mucus. So when the acidic digested material moves forward, you don't want a bunch of them going forward at the same time. It's going to overwhelm the small intestine. Right? It's going to burn the lining. You want to do it a little bit at a time. So the pyloric sphincter controls that. Okay? It's kind of like a water gun, if you would. It's like releases the acid in small squirts. Okay? And then it goes into the small intestine, and then they will get neutralized as they are coming in. All right, next we have the small intestine. Now, the small intestine comes in several different sections. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this for you by alternating the colors. The first one is right here, directly connected to the to the stomach, and you can't really see it in this picture. But if I remove this large intestine, you can see the small intestine will continue to be behind. Okay, it's kind of right there, behind uh, the colon here. So that's the first part of the small intestine. And then I'll change to a different shade of blue here for you. And this would be the second part of the small intestine. And then finally, it would be the last part of the small intestine once again. Okay, so all these blue stuff, they are small intestine. So I'm going to put it right here, small small intestine. And the small intestine has three parts to it. Number one, it's called the duodenum. Duodenum. Number two, jejunum. Jejunum. And number three, ileum. So the duodenum is for digestion, chemical digestion, whereas the jejunum and the ileum is for absorption. Okay, so one, two, and three. Your small intestine, the whole thing is pretty long. Okay, it's about 7 meters long. Duodenum is the shortest one. That's about 12 inches or like 25, 26 centimeter long. And then the jejunum and the ileum, that's where it accounts for most of the length of the small intestine. Okay. Now there is another accessory organ here that I did not label yet, and it's this guy right here. It's kind of behind the stomach, this little thing. Anybody know what that might be? You can see it's full of these little nodules. Yep, that is the pancreas, and it's part of the digestive system as an accessory organ, but it's also part of the endocrine system because it makes various hormones like insulin, glucagon, somatostatin. We'll learn about those later on in the course. Okay, after small intestine, it's gonna go and become the large intestine. And the large intestine has different parts to it um, as well. Okay, so I guess I'm just gonna use different shade of purple for you. Okay, so this is the first part, and then it goes up, and then this is another part, comes down, and then another part. Okay, so in between, I'm gonna alternate with another shade of purple. You can use whatever color you want, doesn't matter. Okay, so the food is gonna come in from the small intestine, from the ileum. It's gonna enter the cecum here. It's gonna go up the ascending colon, across the transverse colon. I'll write down for you. Descending colon, sigmoid colon, and then it's gonna go to the rectum before it comes out. Okay, so let's write them down. Over here we have the cecum. It's the first part of the large intestine. Then up, across, down, and left, that's the colon. Colon is part of the large intestine. So we have ascending, going up, ascending colon, transverse colon, right here. Transverse is like going sideways. Going down is descending. Over here, sigmoid. Take a look at the lab videos, okay? There's a nice full body model where we went through all these structures. You'll be able to see it a little bit better. And over here, that's the rectum, which is where you store the waste until you're ready to let it out. And that's the anus. And what's this little pouch right here? hmm Yeah, that would be the appendix. Very good. Doesn't really do much. It can get infected though. All right, let's give me one moment. All right, two more things here. We have another sphincter, which is right here. You can't really see it, but that's the approximate location. That is a sphincter that guards the small and the large intestine. It's between the ileum, which is the last part of the small intestine, and the cecum, which is the first part of the large intestine. So it's called the ileocecal sphincter. Okay. Someone asked if the anus is also called the anal canal. I think the anus is just the opening. When people say the anal canal, they are really referring to the rectum. Okay, immediately inside the anus, that's where the rectum is going to be, right? That's where the waste is going to be stored. The poop is going to be stored before it comes out. So it's not, this is just the opening, basically. Now obviously the large intestine, that's where like the poopy stuff are, and we don't, and of course it's full of bacteria as you can imagine. So we don't want it to be going back to the small intestine. That's why we need to have a sphincter there. And there are actually two additional sphincter right there at the anus. There is the internal and external sphincter. Okay, one of them is under voluntary control, the other it's not. And it's important to have voluntary control of this sphincter because, it controls when you go to the bathroom. Okay, like we as adults, we can control when to hold it and when not. But kids who are not potty trained, they don't have the voluntary control of that sphincter yet. And so they go when they go. All right, that's pretty much the diagram. Like I said, it's nothing complicated. If you survived the brain labeling, you are probably okay with this. All right. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint slides and we'll pick up from there. Another fun fact, okay, human produces over 1 liter of saliva every day, but you swallow most of it back. Okay, otherwise, we get dehydrated very, very quickly. All right, the mouth. The mouth is where physical and chemical digestions occur. The roof of the mouth is separated from the nasal cavity by the hard palate and the soft palate. So I just want to show you. If you tilt the skeleton here, I mean, the rib cage is kind of in the way, but let me just zoom in a little bit here for you. Right there. Here, let me make it even bigger. There we go. That's the hard palate. Okay, so the hard palate, if you push your tongue up, you feel the hard part of the roof of your mouth, right? So the front of it, the two-third anterior portion, that's made up of a bone called the maxilla. The maxilla also forms the socket for your upper row of teeth. And then behind we have the palatine bone. Okay. So palatine bone actually goes all the way up to part of your eye socket. It's a U-shaped kind of bone that looks like this. This is the whole palatine bone. And oops, I should not have done that. Let me see if I can isolate the maxilla for you. Maxilla is, let me see, right here. That's the mandible. I think I messed it up now. But maybe here. Oh, there it is. Get the maxilla. It's really big, and it forms the bottom of your eye socket. I don't know why it's going so slow. Let me try it. There we go. Okay, it forms the bottom of your eye socket. You can see right here, right, right there. Bottom of your eye socket, the part of your nose ridge as well. But more importantly, on the inside, these would be sockets for your upper row of teeth. And then this here is the hard palate. Okay, so maxilla for the anterior two-third, and then you have the palatine bone for the posterior one-third. That's your hard palate. If you curl your tongue a little bit further back, then it starts to feel soft. And that's the soft palate. Okay, that's mostly just muscle and glandular tissue. Glandular tissue, they mix secretions, okay, like mucus and things like that. The soft palate ends in a finger-like projection called the uvula, which is the thing that seals your nasal cavity. So when you swallow, the food doesn't go up to your nose, right? That's the picture I was trying to show you, right? Just to label it, this is part of the maxilla, and this here is the palatine. We will learn all these bone names when we get to the bone unit, okay? That's kind of like the line that divides them. You can't see the uvula. Okay? The uvula is not a bone. Okay? Uvula is soft tissue. It's that thing that dangles at the back of your throat, right? Okay, so that's the hard palate. All right, teeth. The act of chewing is called mastication. They have to come up with a complicated words for every simple thing. Okay, so mastication means chewing, and that is part of the physical digestion. Chewing your food is of course very important, right? Like your stomach does not have teeth, so you have to grind down the food. Otherwise, like too much burden on your stomach, right? Birds, they don't have teeth; they swallow the thing whole, and to grind the food down, they actually would kind of swallow pebbles, right? And then the pebbles goes into their gizzard, their stomach, and rocks kind of help grind the food down for them. Okay, so we don't need to do that. We have teeth. Babies and kids, they have 20 deciduous teeth or baby teeth. These are teeth that will fall out and they will be replaced by adult teeth. And in adults, there are additional teeth as well. Um, and depending on whether you remove them or not, because they're called wisdom teeth, right? And if you remove them, then you would have less than 32. And if you don't remove them, then you can have up to 32 teeth. Okay. Wisdom teeth come out sometimes can come out sideways. So like if this is your regular teeth molar and then the next one comes out sideways, it's gonna crush the existing one. It's gonna cause quite a bit of pain. And so, they sometimes have to remove it for you. Uh, Baby teeth, if you lose them, they get replaced, of course, but not adult teeth, right? I'm sure you know that already. Incisors, they are the biting teeth, which are located at the front. Okay, they are for biting and clipping, like biting an apple. Canine are the pointy ones. Okay, pointy ones right here. One, two, and then at the bottom as well, canines. They are particularly pointy in some animals like dogs, right? Lions. Right? They are used for tearing food. Ours is not particularly pointy. Premolar and molars, they're for grinding, crushing. Right? Pretty self-explanatory stuff. Okay, just think about how you would choose certain kind of food, right? Then you would know what the function of a teeth are. Saliva are produced by the salivary glands. These are accessory organs, and as we labeled in the diagram earlier, we have three pairs. The parotid right here, the ear is around here, right? So like that's like next to the ear. There's going to be a duct that carries the saliva to your oral cavity. This is the tongue. If you curl your tongue back, you can kind of see kind of like two darker masks. And that's sort of the location, rough location of the sublingual salivary gland. And then this is the submandibular. Okay, remember your lower jawbone, that's called a mandible. It's the only movable bone in the head, uh, and located near it is the submandibular gland. Okay, collectively they secrete about 1 to 1.5 liters of saliva per day. Like I said, most of it you swallow. What is in the saliva though? So saliva is mostly water. Okay, 99% is mostly water. But there are some enzymes in it. Enzymes are proteins that helps carry out chemical reactions in the body. In this case, the main enzyme in saliva is called amylase. Okay, so amylase starts to break down amylose. This is like long time ago from last semester, right, when we learned about macromolecules. You might remember, you might not, I don't know. Glucose plus glucose gives you maltose. Okay, but then if you have like a bunch of glucose connected together, then this is called amylase. And you will find amylase in starch. So if you eat rice, bread, pasta, potatoes, you're gonna have amylase. Okay, and you want to start to break the amylase down in the mouth chemically, at least to start the process. And to break down, sorry, I may have said it wrong. This is amylose, L-O-S-E, that's the sugar. And to break down the amylose, you need the amylase. Okay, so that is the beginning of carbohydrate digestion. Saliva is also important because it moistens the food and it helps you swallow it. It's very difficult to swallow food when it's completely dry. Saliva also contains lysozyme. We learned that in lecture three, and some antibodies, and that helps control the bacteria growth in the mouth. Now, people do really weird things online nowadays, right? And one of the things that this actually happened like 10 years ago, okay? And At the time, people were doing this thing called the cinnamon challenge, and it basically involves swallowing a spoonful of cinnamon. Okay, not the stick, but like the powder, right? And the cinnamon actually is very good at sucking up saliva. Okay, so what happens is the as soon as you put the spoon of saliva, sorry, a spoon of cinnamon into the mouth and you try to swallow it, it basically dries up your mouth. And this highlights the importance of saliva in the process of swallowing. Okay, if it's really dry and you try to swallow it, what ended up happening for one person was that it went into the airway. Okay, and then it just got stuck there, and the person actually died. Asphyxia is basically can't breathe, right? And so, it's not a very safe thing to do. But if you thought that was dangerous, that was not the end of it, right? Like later on, I don't know if you guys remember, like people start swallowing Tide Pods, right? Those detergent pots for laundries, and then it just gets like really, really, really dumb and weird. Um, Anyways, I guess the point is we have to educate our kids and make sure that they don't participate in these dangerous things. Okay, moving on, the pharynx, which is I can write down for you again. You probably remember from before, is the common passageway for food, water. I guess we can say liquid because I'm sure water is not the only thing we drink, and air, and connects the mouth to the esophagus. Um, when we are swallowing, you remember the larynx pushes up against the epiglottis, which is the elastic flap that will seal the glottis. And at the same time, the uvula is going to close the nasal pharynx. And so the food is going to go down the esophagus only. Remember that X-ray video I showed you with the person swallowing? So when the food is ready to be swallowed, your tongue will roll it into a ball. The ball is called a bolus, bolus. When the bolus hits the back of the throat, it triggers the swallowing reflex, which, by the way, we learned happens in the medulla oblongata. Okay. Medulla oblongata has four reflexes in the notes. There is the swallowing reflex, okay, sneezing, coughing, and vomiting, which is something I've been experiencing for the past couple of days. That's why my voice is so deep today. It's like super sore throat. So all these reflexes are happening in the medulla oblongata, okay, and then triggers the food to go down the esophagus. The esophagus connects the pharynx to the stomach. Okay, it's longer than the trachea. Trachea, it's about 12, 13 centimeter. The esophagus is a little longer than that. It passes through the diaphragm. There's a hole in it. We already labeled the hole. It's called the esophageal hiatus. And the esophagus is actually lined with stratified squamous epithelium. If you forgot, stratify means multiple layers of flat cells. Right? Think about the kind of stuff that we eat. Yeah, they are hot, they are cold, they are acidic. Sometimes they are abrasive. Right? Abrasive means like it's, like if you eat chips and that kind of stuff, right? They're not like smooth, right? They have like sharp edges and, it doesn't go down nicely in some cases. And so, having these multiple layers will actually protect the lining of the esophagus so it doesn't get damaged. So esophagus is ordinarily collapsed, right? Unlike the trachea, which is always open, the esophagus is only open when it's receiving a bolus, when it's receiving food or liquid. The contraction, the squeeze and push that I was telling you about, that pushes the food down, is done by smooth muscle in the muscularis, and your parasympathetic system controls that for you. These rhythmical contractions, we call them peristalsis. Peristalsis. And it continues to push through all the way to the anus. The entrance of the esophagus to the stomach is marked by a sphincter. It's called the cardiac sphincter. Some textbook will call it the lower esophageal sphincter. Doesn't really matter. Both is okay. Okay, it's cardiac sphincter because it's close to the heart. And when you say a person is experiencing a heartburn, that's the cardiac sphincter. That's, not sealing properly, right? Uh, okay, talking about challenges. So 10 years 10 years ago, the cinnamon challenge, Thai pot challenge, and then more recently, there is something called the ghost pepper challenge. Uh, I don't know if you guys like spicy stuff. I used to not like it, but I kind of like it now more. I like it more now, but like not I can't take really, really hot stuff though. Mild stuff is okay. So you might add a bit of like sriracha to your food. So we measure the spiciness using this thing called the Scoville Hot Unit. Okay, SHU. Basically, the higher the number, the more spicy it is. So if you think about sriracha or Tabasco, right, these are common hot condiments. They are about 2,000, 3,000 range. Okay, on the Scoville unit. Okay, so if you've had those before and it doesn't really bother you, uh, that's the reference for you. All right. Now, as we climb up this chart, it gets harder and harder, spicier and spicier. Okay. So we have jalapeno is another common one. You find jalapenos in various things, right? Tacos, and sometimes people put it on their pizza, and there are chips that are have jalapeno flavor. So the pepper itself, if you eat it as is, it's about 5,000, 4,000 to 5,000 SHU. So double the intensity of Sriracha and Tabasco. All right. The jalapeno is manageable for most people, but the really, really hot one, it used to be what's called oh, actually, the ghost pepper is the top of the chart right here. Okay, but people breed them. Right? They use Mendelian genetics actually to breed them and make them hotter and hotter. So they come up with like new ones every now and then. And the ghost pepper is 1 million SXU. Right? And then there was this contest where people had to eat as many ghost pepper as possible within, I don't know, a minute or 2 minutes or something like that. And one guy ate it, but then his body cannot take it. It actually burned a hole in his esophagus because it was so spicy. And he was hospitalized at the on the bed, and they have to put a tube to feed him because his esophagus cannot take food down anymore. Right? It needs time to heal, and so he was on a feeding tube for the duration of the stay to wait for the esophagus to heal. And since then, they have even like hotter one. It's called the Carolina Reaper. Okay, I think like at the fast food chains, I remember seeing it at Burger King. They have the ghost pepper chicken nuggets for a while. I actually tried it. It was pretty spicy. Ended up wasting all of it. I couldn't finish it. In the excuse me, in the all these hot stuff, the molecule that's responsible for the spiciness is this compound here called capsaicin. The capsaicin. Now, if you remember the sensory organ lecture, when we learn about taste, there's salty, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami. Only five tastes. There's no such taste as spicy, right? So spicy is not a taste. There's no taste bud for spicy. Capsaicin actually stimulate your thermal receptors on the lung, on the tongues, okay? And it tells your body you are really, really hot. And that's why people, when people eat spicy food, they start to sweat, right? And then their body turns red. It's basically your body responding to a high temperature. Okay. And what do people drink when they have like really spicy stuff and they want to get rid of it? Like if you ever see these spicy eating contests, what people usually have next to them? Anybody know what I'm talking about? They don't drink water. What do they drink? Nobody ever seen these things before? Yeah, there you go, Kendra. The milk, exactly, right? So milk actually, uh, because milk has lipids in it, and I don't know if you learned this in chemistry yet, but this ring here, this benzene ring, is hydrophobic. And so the milk actually binds to these compounds and kind of wash it away from the receptors. And it kind of neutralize it, right? And it helps you take away the sensation quite effectively. Oh yeah, there's a YouTube channel where someone just mentioned it. It's called the Hot Chicken Wing Interviews. It's quite funny. You guys should look it up. Right? Where the celebrities sometimes they'll be eating these chicken wings while the host asks them all kinds of questions, and then the chicken wings would get like more and more spicy. Uh, it's entertaining when you watch someone do it. But anyways, if you if you can take the spicy, then you got to watch it. Otherwise, it might burn a hole in your esophagus. And that actually is the least concerning place to have a hole in. Okay, like if there is a hole in the stomach, for example, right, like that could cause much, much bigger problems. Okay, so what macromolecules begins chemical digestions in the mouth? It's carbohydrates because of the amylase. Okay, we talked about that already. Which salivary gland is located next to the ear? If you have been labeling with me, then you would know it's the parotid salivary gland. Parotid, it's A. C, then A. And maybe we'll just do this one. Go ahead, please. Yep. So remember I was telling you, right? We eat all sorts of stuff, hot stuff, spicy stuff, cold stuff, chunky stuff. So you need to protect the esophagus. And the best kind of protection that you can offer would be multiple layers of flat cells, stratify squamous, which is C. Okay, why don't we take a break? Why don't we take a break and we'll continue in about 5 minutes? Okay, so let's come back at what time is it? Let's come back at 9. Yeah, let's do 9:50. Okay, 9:50. Okay, see you guys in a bit. All right, let's keep going. So next stop is the stomach, and food typically stays in the stomach for about 2 to 4 hours. I mean, it really depends on what you're eating. Some things pass through it faster if they're easily digest. Things like, you know, oatmeal, for example, doesn't stay there very long. Okay, it could just pass through like in half an hour. If you're eating like steak, for example, that might stay in the stomach for a longer period of time, right? It depends on the type of food that you have. Anywhere from 2 to 4 hours is the average. And while it stays in the stomach, it's gonna get mixed with the hydrochloric acid, and eventually it's gonna become an acidic mixture, which is called the chyme. Okay, chyme is basically the stuff that you vomit out. Okay, like that. That's what it is. It's a soapy, acidic mixture of partially digested food. Okay, chyme. Um, the stomach, as I told you, has two sphincters. The one at the top is cardiac sphincter, which prevents food from re-entering the esophagus. And then the pyloric sphincter regulates how much of the chyme will go into the small intestine. Like I said, you don't want to overwhelm the duodenum. You want to let a little bit of acid move forward at a time. Now, this is a very interesting, I guess, story. Much of what we learned about the stomach and how it works actually came from the study of this man. Let me just look at my notes here. I don't remember the dates and stuff like that. So this is in the 1800s, and we have a Canadian voyager. I guess it's a person who travels from places to places. His name was Alexis Saint Martin. Okay, so he went from port to port to do fur trade, I believe. And one day, when he was standing at the port, there was an accident. A shotgun misfired about 3 feet away from where he was standing, and it left a hole in his abdomen right here. And the doctor did what they can, and they dressed the wound, but it just wouldn't close. The wound wouldn't close, and then they actually are able to see the stomach through the hole. It actually left a hole in the stomach as well, okay, and that didn't close. And so the doctor developed a relationship with this guy to experiment on him, basically. I don't know if it was like, he had the consent to do it or something, but according to the story, the doctor performed over 238 experiments on this guy. And the experiment goes something like this, okay? He would put some kind of food in a pouch, and then he would feed it into the hole, and then put it into the stomach of the guy. Yeah, and then every now and then he would take the food back out and then examine it and see how much was it digested. Okay, and through these kind of experiment, he learned a lot about the stomach, and then we know a lot about the stomach partially because of what he did. Uh, how the man survived without getting, serious infections is something I don't really quite understand. Like, if you constantly put things in and take things back out, it doesn't seem like a very safe thing to do. but I guess the stomach acid is quite strong and it's able to withstand the infection potentially. Anyway, if you're interested about this story, you can look it up. All right. Oh, the doctor's name, I just see it's William Beaumont. William Beaumont. You can just look up, the guy with the hole in the stomach, and then you will be able to find the story. Anyways, the stomach is pretty flexible. It can hold a lot of food. If you ever watch people do like eating contests, they can fit like, I don't know, like 40 hot dogs in the stomach. In under half an hour, right? So it's really, really distendable. The empty stomach has these folds called rugae. They're kind of like wrinkles in a balloon. As soon as you inflate a balloon, the wrinkles are gone. So as soon as the stomach is full, the rugae are no longer there. It's not visible in an extended stomach. The stomach, you can think of it as kind of like a washing machine. The contents kind of, always getting cycled through, turning around, and that's because of the three layers of the muscle. The oblique, the circular, and the longitudinal muscle will help mix the stomach content with the gastric juices. The gastric juices is mostly acid, mostly hydrochloric acid, but then it has other stuff in it as well. Okay. Remember, the oblique layer is only present in the stomach. It's not present for the rest of the GI tract. The rest of the GI tract only has circular and longitudinal. So there is the stomach. If you peel away the serosa, you will see the muscularis. We have the longitudinal, circular, and diagonal oblique right here. These little foldings, they are called the rugae. Cardiac sphincter up here, pyloric sphincter down here. Now, if you zoom into the interior of the stomach, it's actually really bumpy. And every now and then there are these very deep pits. Yeah, they are called the gastric pits. And at the bottom of the gastric pits, you would have various cells. We have these things called parietal cells, chief cells, and mucus cells. And together they secrete all these things that would contribute to the gastric juices. So this is a closer look. You can see the pit right here. This would be the surface of the stomach. Okay, so like if you imagine walking along the surface of the stomach, the interior surface of the stomach, like there will be these very deep things that you can fall into, okay? So this gastric pit at the bottom will have the gastric gland. And like I said, you have different types of cells, mucus cells, parietal cells, and chief cells. Okay? Mucus cells is pretty self-explanatory, right? The mucus cell is responsible for secreting mucus. Okay? And you need to have this thick layer of mucus in the stomach to withstand the acid. Okay? The hydrochloric acid is very, very low in pH. The pH is 1 to 2. Okay? It's strong enough to digest a nail, for example. So we need to protect our stomach lining from it. So the thick mucus is important. What about the parietal and the chief cells? Oops, sorry, before that. So mucus cell secretes a thick layer of mucus, as I said, protects the stomach from its own acid. Uh, because of this thick mucus layer, no absorption takes place in the stomach in terms of food absorption and nutrients absorption. The only thing you can absorb in the stomach are alcohol and water. Okay. That's why people say if you drink alcohol with an empty stomach, like you might get drunk quicker because without the food, the alcohol just goes right into the blood immediately. And that could, speed up the process of intoxication. Now, sometimes there are some bacteria that can live inside the mucus. They bury themselves in the mucus lining of the stomach, and basically protects themselves from the acid. This kind of bacteria, one of those bacteria is called the H. pylori. It's estimated that half to 50% of the population has H. pylori in them. But if your immune system is otherwise intact, they don't really cause any problems. But when they do cause problems, the H. pylori can eat away the lining of the stomach, damage it, and it causes ulcer, which left untreated could increases the risk of stomach cancer. So there is a way to test whether you have H. pylori or not. If you get stomach pain all the way, all the time, and you stay awake at night because of the pain, then you might want to get it checked out. There's a breathing test that they could do to see if you have H. pylori. Exactly, right, with the urea. And then if they determine that you have H. pylori, then they put you on antibiotics for, I think, about a month. That should usually take care of it. And you do the breathing test again to see whether you have it or not. People who are living in close quarters with others, like your spouse, for example, um, they can transmit the H. pylori from one person to another. My wife had pylori. It's like 15 years ago. And she was on the antibiotic for a month and she was fine. I thought I probably caught it too, because I also have stomach pain every now and then. But it turns out I don't. And the pain was caused by something else. But this thing, it's in a lot of people in the population, and you might not even know it. And for the most part, it's okay if you don't, if it's not causing any problem. Having them in you is not um, is not exactly a concern necessarily. Right? It's only when they cause the ulcers and then the stomach pain, then that's when treatments are usually needed. Okay, so the other two cells in the gland. Remember the pit, and then the bottom of the pit is the gland, right? We also have these chief cells and parietal cells. So let's talk about the chief cells first. The chief cells secretes pepsinogen. Okay, this was like a long time ago. I told you if it ends with ogen, like the fibrinogen, it means it is inactive. So the pepsinogen, it's a precursor. It's an inactive form of an enzyme called pepsin. And pepsin is needed to digest proteins. Okay, so proteins are made up of amino acids. You learned that from me last semester. And in the presence of pepsin, it's going to chop them up. They chop them up into like smaller strands of amino acid chains. Yeah. But when you make the enzyme, it's in the inactive form, pepsinogen. And the thing that's activating it, it's hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid in the stomach has a couple of functions. Okay. So like, for example, it does digestions, obviously. Okay. The acid will also denature proteins, unravels them, so it's easier to cut them. And it also will activates pepsinogen, and of course for immune defense. Okay. Lots of bacteria uh, just like landing from the air onto the food, right? And if you don't wash your hands, you might have bacteria in your hands, and then you eat them, and then it goes to your stomach. And generally speaking, the acid is strong enough to kill them off. Okay. All right. In addition to the chief cells, we also have the parietal cells. Parietal cells. Okay, so these are the cells that actually produces the hydrochloric acid. Okay, pH around 2. It could be lower, could be higher, depending. And oh, I I didn't know I have this slide. It's basically what I wrote down here. Okay, so HCl is going to break down connective tissue in meat, activates pepsinogen, provides immune protection. The parietal cells also produce another thing called the intrinsic factor. The intrinsic factor is a sugary protein that binds to vitamin B12. Okay? We need vitamin B12 to make hemoglobin. Okay, and the B12 will get broken down by the acid if it wasn't for the intrinsic factor. Okay? So intrinsic factor basically binds to the B12 and it shields it from the acid so that later on you can absorb it in your intestine. Okay. Some people cannot produce intrinsic factor because of genetic mutation, and then they get a form of anemia. Okay, because now you're not making the hemoglobin, right? And so for these people, taking extra vitamin B12 might help. By taking more than, sure, some of it get destroyed, maybe some will make it past the stomach, and you can still absorb them. But maybe shots, like the injections of the B12 might be more appropriate in some situations. Okay, so just to recap, uh, the stomach lining is bumpy, and then you have these pits um, that is like a deep uh, depression, if you would. And at the bottom of it, that's where you will find the glands. The glands have these parietal cells and chief cells. Chief cells makes pepsinogen. Parietal cells makes uh, intrinsic factor and hydrochloric acid. Okay, so hydrochloric acid is produced by parietal cells, right? We literally just went through that. And the enzyme produced by chief cell is pepsinogen. Pepsinogen. Okay, we're almost done. Let's continue on with the intestines. Your intestine has as much surface area as a tennis court. If you lay it all out, right, it covers a lot of area, and then it makes sense because you want to have large surface area for absorption and chemical reactions to take place. The small intestine is the longest part of the GI tract. We labeled it already. Connected to the stomach immediately is the duodenum. It's behind the transverse colon, and then it becomes the jejunum and the ileum. Duodenum is the shortest part, about 25 centimeter, 12 inches. Jejunum is about 2.5 meter long, and ileum is about 3.6 meters long. I mean, it depends on how tall the person is, right? Obviously, if the person is taller, then these things are going to be longer. So collectively, they're about 7 meters long. The walls of the small intestine. Now, this part might be a little bit difficult to visualize, so let me try to draw it out for you. I told you the inside of the small intestine is it's not smooth like this. If it's smooth, it covers about 400 square feet of total area. But with all these extra foldings, it covers as much as 2,000 square feet. Okay, so let's take a look at the features. First of all, oops, let's use black. Okay, so this is features that increases surface area in small intestine. So as you saw earlier, the small intestine has these, foldings in it. And so these foldings, they are called circular folds. And you can imagine if the inside is smooth, right? Like the total length here is going to be less than if it's all, you know, folded up like that. But that's not all. If you zoom in into these circular folds, on the circular folds, this would be the circular folds. On the circular folds, you would have extra projections coming out of it. So they're like folds on top of folds. Okay, so one of them is called villas, and then the plural for villas is villi. So these villi further increases the surface area. And if you take a look at this one, if you zoom in onto the villi, like what is it made up of? The villi is actually made up of specialized columnar cell with extra foldings. These are not cilia. Okay, these are called microvilli. Okay, so the cell will look like this, and then it has like these combs at the end that further increases the surface area. So if we stretch it all out, like the microvilli and the villi and the circular folds, it increases the total surface area much, much, much more drastically. Okay. If you need the definition of these things, they are all in the PowerPoint slides right here. Okay. This is the actual picture. Um, you can see the PC. The PC is actually the circular fold. Circular fold. Okay, never mind PC, circular fold. And on the circular folds, you can see these villi right here. These are the villi. Okay, you cannot see the microvilli clearly. You have to zoom in. You can have to zoom in on this section, and then you will see the individual cells with the hair comb. Okay, the circular fold is part of the mucosa. Outside of that, outside of that, you have the submucosa, where the blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and the nerves are going to be. And ME, outside of that, outside of the submucosa, the ME here is the muscularis, right? With the circular and the longitudinal muscle layer. Now, there's also something called L here, which I will explain in a bit. The first part of the small intestine is called the duodenum. And in the duodenum, that's where you will be doing chemical digestions. Right? So we started the chemical digestions of carbohydrate in the mouth a little bit with the amylase. We started the chemical digestions of proteins in the stomach with the pepsin, but there's still a lot of stuff to break down. Okay? The carbohydrates are not completely broken down. The proteins get chopped into small chains of amino acids, but you want to break it down into individual amino acid, right? And we haven't even break down the fats yet. So all that stuff is going to be happening in the duodenum. And the duodenum will be receiving secretion from the gallbladder as well as the pancreas. Okay, you can see it's a bile duct that will be carrying the bile to the duodenum, And then the pancreas has a pancreatic duct that will be carrying the secretion from the pancreas to the duodenum as well. Now, there are two types of cells in the pancreas. We have the exocrine cells and the endocrine cells. The endocrine cells is for hormones. Okay, so we'll learn about that later on. For digestive function, it's the exocrine cells. That's going to be important. So what's the difference? Okay, exocrine equals to secrete through a duct. Okay? So there is a pancreatic duct here. Your sweat gland is exocrine because the sweat comes out of the sweat duct. Right? The mammillary glands, the milk is secreted through ducts. That would be exocrine gland. Endocrine, endocrine secretes directly, directly into the blood, directly into the blood. And there's no duct. So hormones are gonna go right into the blood. So for digestive purposes, we are only looking at the exocrine uh, function of the pancreas. So let's focus on the liver and the gallbladder first. The liver makes bile and is stored in the gallbladder. Like I said, the bile is going to be secreted directly to the duodenum from the bile duct. So bile is a combination of water, a little bit of cholesterol, and a few other hydrophobic compounds. And the function of bile is to break down the chunk of lipids into smaller droplets. Okay, this process is called emulsification. Emulsification. It makes a large clump of lipids into smaller droplets like that. You're not chemically breaking down the fat, you're physically breaking down the fat. Okay, emulsification. By breaking the lipids into smaller chunks, it increases the surface area available for lipase to gain access to it. Okay, so lipase is an enzyme that breaks down lipid. So anything that's ASE, it's an enzyme. Amylase breaks down amylose, right? Lipase breaks down lipid. Proteases breaks down protein. We mentioned about gallstone earlier. Bile contains these things, and if there is a high cholesterol content, it could start to crystallize. And once the gallstones start growing, it hurts a lot. And sometimes they may get stuck in the bile duct and causes inflammation. And then you would have to remove the gallbladder. Okay. The bile, by the way, it's really bitter and it has this yellowish greenish color to it because of the bilirubin. You might have this experience before. Okay, if you are food poisoned, sometimes you vomit a lot. Okay, and then you vomit all the food out, um, and then you still vomit more. The next thing that comes out would be like this, the bile, the bitter stuff, right? The yellowish, greenish things that you would vomit out, right? So that's the only time the bile would come out. Otherwise, it stays relatively in the small intestine. Okay. Liver, what else does it do? Liver helps detoxify blood by removing waste products and poison. It stores iron for production of hemoglobin. Various vitamins is going to be stored there as well. You don't have to memorize the vitamin list, okay? It makes various plasma proteins. These are all the ones that we've learned from previous units. Liver also stores extra glucose in the form of glycogen. We learned this from last semester. The storage form of energy is glycogen, stores in the liver and muscle. When blood glucose is low, the liver will sometimes convert glycerol to glucose. Glycerol is a component of fat. If you recall again from last semester, a fat is glycerol with fatty acids. The glycerol portion can be converted into glucose in a process called gluconeogenesis. Genesis is creation, neo is new, so this is the genesis of new glucose. That's what it means. All right, so that's the liver and the pancreas. Sorry, liver and gallbladder. Now we're going to talk about the pancreas quickly. The pancreas secretes two things that are important for digestion. Okay? Collectively, the mixture is called pancreatic juices. In that pancreatic juice, the two important ingredients are number one, sodium bicarbonate, which is NaHCO3. You learned that in chemistry. Remember, the duodenum does not have mucus. So when the acidic chyme with a pH of 2 is coming in, we need to neutralize it. Okay, so HCl, which is acidic, plus the NaHCO3, which is basic, is basically going to have a neutralization reaction. I don't know if you guys learned this in chemistry. You can tell me. So you're going to get NaCl, which is just salt, and H2O, liquid, and then a little bit of gas. Okay, so this is a neutralization reaction. And we need the chyme to be neutralized. Otherwise, it will irritate the duodenum. If there's something wrong with the pancreas and you're with the pancreas and you're not producing the sodium bicarbonate, then the acid might start to eat away the duodenum, and people can get duodenal ulcer. In addition to the sodium bicarbonate, the pancreatic juice also contains pancreatic enzymes. And there are at least 28 different enzymes that are produced by the pancreas. So I'm going to go through some of them with you. So carbohydrates are converted into simple sugars such as glucose by amylase and lactase. And you can tell by the name what it does. Amylase breaks down amylose. Lactase breaks down lactose. Okay, probably have other carbohydrates enzymes as well. Okay, like sucrose would be broken down by sucrase, so on and so forth. Right. Proteins are broken down into amino acids by pepsin. Right? The stomach has pepsin in it, but the pancreatic juice also has pepsin in it. Okay, in its activated form. Um, Pepsin has a related enzyme called trypsin. Right? They both break down protein. It's just that the way they do it, it's a little bit different. You don't have to know exactly how different. And then there are other proteases as well. Okay, so I'm just giving you a few examples to remember. Fat broken down into fatty acid and glycerol by lipase, and nucleic acids are broken down into nucleotides by nucleases. Okay, nucleases. So there's a whole list of these enzymes, but here are some examples of them. I forgot to mention, when a person removes the gallbladder, uh, it does not affect their ability to produce bile, because bile is made by the liver, right? So as long as the liver is intact, it's okay. You can still make the bile, but you can see in this picture if you remove the gallbladder, this whole thing is gone. You can see the bile can go directly from the liver to the duodenum. Right? It's just that you cannot store it, right? So people who remove the gallbladder at the beginning, they have to adjust their diet a little bit, right, to kind of avoid greasy food, because your ability to break them down is now, weaker, and so it's gonna make you have upset stomach and stuff like that if you eat too much greasy stuff. But eventually, your body will get used to it, and your liver will be able to kind of make the bile on demand and help you uh, break down the fat. Okay, so this is a good summary table to help you see what's going on. Let's say you had some starch, right, from bread, pasta, so on and so forth. Then you will start breaking this stuff down in the mouth. But when it gets to the duodenum, the amylase from the pancreas will continue to break it down. And it might chop it down into double glucose. The double glucose is called maltose. We learned that last semester. And to break down the maltose, you would need to have maltase, right? And then you get the individual glucose, and then you will absorb the glucose later on in the jejunum and the ileum. Similarly, we have the protein. Protein's going to be broken down in the stomach. The stomach acid will unravel it, and then the pepsin in the stomach might break it down a little bit, but it's not completed. When it gets to duodenum, there are additional pancreatic proteases. Proteases is just like a generic name for enzyme that breaks down protein. We learn about pepsin and we learn about trypsin. They will chop up the proteins into even smaller peptides and individual amino acids, and they will be absorbed into the bloodstream directly. Again, at the last two parts of the small intestine, right? The jejunum and the ileum. For fats is a little bit more complicated. We got these big blobs of fats. It's really hard to get at them. So you want to, break them down into smaller droplets, and that would be the function of bile. Bile is made in the liver, stored in the gallbladder, and then it gets secreted into the duodenum. So the bile will help break the fat globs into little droplets. It's called emulsification. And then the lipase will come. The lipase is from pancreas. And they will make them into little droplet, break the fats down into the fatty acids and the glycerol. And what happens is, because lipids are hydrophobic and it doesn't mix well with the liquid portion of the blood, so you cannot absorb them directly into the bloodstream like the other two kinds of nutrients. Okay? The lipids needs to be absorbed through the lymphatic capillaries. Okay, so I just want to remind you, at the beginning, I mentioned in the submucosa layer, the second layer, right? Submucosa, there are blood vessels as well as lymphatic vessels. And that's the function of the lymphatic vessels in the small intestine. It allows these fatty molecules to be transported to the liver. Oh, I don't have a slide for that. But what happens is it goes to the liver. I should write it down. To liver. And it will get processed. Yeah, when it gets processed, um, they will be combined with these lipoproteins, and they would get converted into like HDL or LDL, the good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and then they will go into blood circulation. All right. I thought I had a slide of this. Okay, I probably should draw it out for you because it's important. So back to here. This is the circular folds, right? And this is the villus. Now, this would be like the blood vessels, and then the blood vessels is gonna, come up here into the villi, the villus. And then what's really important to know in this case is there is also the lymphatic vessels, which are green usually, drawn in green, not actually green. And then the lymphatic vessel will come up as well. And this portion that comes up into the villus, that's called the lacteal. Okay, and what's important to know about the lacteal is it plays a role in absorbs lipids and transport them to the liver. All right. Okay, just a couple more slides. Which of the following is not an accessory organ? Um, we talk about the salivary gland, that's accessory organ, liver, gallbladder, pancreas. Appendix is not an accessory organ. It doesn't secrete anything into the GI tract. Mhm. So that's not it. The function of bile is to chemically break down fat, physically break down fat, absorb fat into bloodstream, reduce fat absorption. So remember, bile is taking a big blob and then making it into smaller blobs, right? So that's a physical breakdown. You're not changing the fats chemically. You're just like making them into smaller droplets. The purpose of sodium bicarbonate in pancreatic juice is to chemically digest protein. Nope, that would be the function of like trypsin and pepsin, neutralize chyme in the stomach. We don't want to neutralize the chyme in the stomach, okay? We need the acid to break down the food. And so we need to neutralize the chyme in the duodenum. Okay? Once again, because the duodenum does not have the mucus lining. Emulsify fat, no, that is the job of bile. All right. So we are almost at the end of our journey through the digestive system. After passing through the duodenum for chemical digestion, the absorption takes place in the jejunum and the ileum. And then we're going to go through the ileocecal sphincter, right here. Sphincter is a valve. And then we're going to enter the large intestine. Large intestine has three parts: the cecum, the colon, and the rectum. Okay. And so what happens is uh, the main function of the large intestine is to recoup anything that we missed, basically, up to this point. And at this point, the food, the nutrients is mostly absorbed. Okay. What's left would be mostly water. There's some electrolytes and maybe some vitamins that we can take back. And what stimulate the movement of the large intestines would be uh, the fibers in our diet. Okay, so having enough fibers will stimulate the peristalsis and allows the movement of the material to be relatively smooth. If there's not enough dietary fibers, it could lead to reduced bowel movement. That leads to over absorption of water, and that results in constipation. Opposite of constipation is diarrhea. And that could happen when the person is having food poisoning. Right? Diarrhea is basically your body's way of trying to get rid of the waste, of the toxin, as quickly as possible. Right. So, there are things like Imodium and stuff like that that would like slow down the bowel movement when someone is having a diarrhea. But like that might not be the ideal thing to do. Yeah, like if you're at home and you have access to the bathroom relatively close by, then maybe you don't want to slow it down because the quicker your body gets rid of the toxin, the quicker you will feel better, right? Okay. But like if you're on the road and then it becomes a problem, then that's when those medication might be useful. Okay, so either of these things are not good. Actually, sometimes if you don't eat a lot of fibers, and then all of a sudden you decided to increase your intake of fibers, you have to do it gradually. Okay, sudden drastic increase of fibers actually can also cause constipation and bloating because your body is not used to it. It doesn't know what to do with all these extra fibers, right? And then that could also lead to constipation, right? So like no drastic changes generally. Like you want to do it gradually, okay? Ease into it. And then whatever you don't absorb, it becomes the poop. A more polite word for poop is feces. Roughly 75% water, 25% solid. The color of the feces is created by bilirubin. You might remember bilirubin. It's the byproduct of hemoglobin breakdown. Um, and if you have a lot of iron in your diet, it could change the color as well. Okay? It becomes darker, and almost like a blackish color, if there's a lot of oxidized dye in it. Certain kind of food can change it, the color as well. If you eat, I don't know, blueberry or something, right, the color is gonna also change. And the color and the state of the feces actually tells you a lot about the health of your gut. Okay, so sometimes doctors might test a sample of your feces as well for blood and see if there is like you might not be able to see the blood in it, but like if you do a chemical test, there might be traces of blood in it, and that could tell you something about what's wrong with your guts and things like that. In the large intestine, there are a bunch of bacteria. These are good bacteria. They help us. Um, we kind of feed them with some of the undigested cellulose. We can use the cellulose, but they can. And in return, they give us some essential fatty acids and some vitamins. But at the same time, the bacterial activity can produce hydrogen gas, hydrogen sulfide gas, which then, it's going to be passed out. And that is generally unpleasant. The anus. There is the internal anal sphincter, which is not under voluntary control. The external anal sphincter is made up of skeletal muscle, and it's under voluntary control. Babies don't have control over the sphincters until about year and a half old. Right? They just don't like the pathway that goes from the brain to the sphincter through the spinal cord. That pathway is just not fully developed yet. Okay. So like if you're trying to potty train like too early, they physically cannot do it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't start, right? Like you should, you could, right? Introduce the concept, at least like, cognitively, they understand that there's a need to do it. And then when their body is actually ready to control it, then, they already understand the concept of doing it, right? So that is the last two sphincter before things come out. And that is it, guys. Okay. That is all there is to do for Unit 2. A couple of key things to pay attention to this week. Of course, you have the test, which is on Friday. I will review the test for you on Wednesday. I already posted the review. Okay, so if you go to Luminate, um, there's test number 2, and then there is the review. And you can start working on it, start studying. I'll take it up on Wednesday with you. There's the lab as well. I believe the lab is due on Wednesday at the midnight, right? You definitely should work through it. If there are particular slides that you're not sure of, you can ask me on Wednesday as well. If there are certain labels that you don't know what the answers are, you can let me know and I'll take it up with you. Okay. The lab will also require all those new online testing stuff. Yeah, you still have to turn on your camera and also no notes and stuff like that. It's only 2.5%, so it's a good way to get used to, the new testing environment before you do the 20% test. All right. And that's it for today, guys. Okay. Thank you, and see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye for now.